She stood on my porch with that smug grin again, waving a folder like she'd just won the lottery. "Mr. Daniels, you signed the agreement last month. We're expanding the HOA boundaries to include your lot." I blinked, trying not to laugh. "What agreement?" Karen, our HOA president, tapped the papers with her manicured nails. "This one. Your signature's right here." I took the folder, scanned the page, and froze. My name, my address, my signature. But I'd never seen this document before. My chest tightened. "You forged this," Karen smirked. "You can't prove that." The words hit me like a slap. She turned and strutted down the steps, calling over her shoulder, "Expect your first HOA dues notice by Monday. Oh, and take down that shed. It violates our design code." I stood there, gripping the fake contract. Something wasn't right. The HOA had been trying for months to rope my property into their control, but this was criminal. My late father bought this land 50 years ago. It had never been part of their community. That night, I pulled out our deed and compared the signatures side by side. My signature curved left. The fake one curved right. She didn't even try to copy it well. I snapped photos of everything. Then, as I scrolled through the HOA's online posts, something else caught my eye. Karen had just bragged in a Facebook group about expanding HOA territory through creative paperwork. Creative paperwork? That was my land she was talking about. I didn't sleep. By sunrise, I was sitting in my truck, contract in hand, heart pounding. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do, but one thing was certain. Karen had no idea who she'd messed with. By noon, I drove straight to the county recorder's office. The clerk, an older man with glasses slipping down his nose, looked up as I laid the forged contract on his desk. "I need to check if this was ever officially filed," I said, trying to sound calm. He frowned, flipped through the pages, and typed something into his computer. "Well, that's strange," he muttered. "This document was filed 2 weeks ago. Under your name." My stomach dropped. "Can you tell who submitted it?" He squinted at the screen, then looked up slowly. "A woman named Karen Holbrook, listed as HOA president." I clenched my fists. She'd actually filed it with the county. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. It was fraud, plain and simple. I asked for certified copies, paid the fee, and walked out with shaking hands. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright, the air too heavy. I sat in my truck for a long time before dialing my lawyer, Brian, a quiet, sharp guy I'd served with in the Army years ago. "Brian, I've got a situation," I said. "HOA president forged my signature on a property document and filed it with the county." He didn't hesitate. "That's federal fraud if it crossed jurisdiction lines. Email me everything." Don't confront her yet. Too late. When I got home, Karen was already there with 2 board members standing near my fence snapping photos. "This is HOA property now," she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "We're documenting violations." I stepped closer, voice steady but low. "You forged my signature and filed it. That's a felony, Karen." Her fake smile didn't falter. "You'll regret saying that." The way she said it, so calm, so confident, sent a chill through me. I knew she had something planned, but she didn't know what I was planning either. That night, I sent Brian every file, photo, and timestamp. He replied with just one line, "Don't worry. I'm forwarding this to someone I know at the Bureau." I stared at that message, a slow grin forming. Maybe Karen had finally picked the wrong veteran to mess with. The next morning, Karen posted another brag on her HOA page. "Successfully expanded HOA territory. Compliance is mandatory. A winning." She even tagged the 2 board members who'd helped her. I grabbed my laptop and started recording everything. Screenshots, timestamps, her location from the post. Every little brag became evidence. By mid-afternoon, I got a call from Brian. "They want to meet at the HOA office," he said. "FBI's involved. They're raiding the place." My heart skipped. Raiding? That was bigger than I imagined. I followed Brian to the office, parked a block away, and watched as black SUVs pulled up. Agents in suits streamed out, flash IDs in hand. Karen and the board members were caught off guard, papers flying from their hands. She screamed, "This is harassment." "I'm the HOA president." One agent, calm but firm, shook his head. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for document fraud and forgery. Step aside." The scene was surreal. Karen tried to hide files in a cabinet, but the agents were too quick. Cameras flashed, boxes of papers were hauled out, and her smug grin vanished. The board members mumbled, confused and scared. I stood across the street, phone in hand, recording the entire raid. The neighborhood peered out from windows, whispering. Karen's empire of fake authority was crumbling live. Brian put a hand on my shoulder. You did everything right. Documentation, proof, timing. You're solid. I let myself smile, but it was cautious. Karen was unpredictable. Even in cuffs, she glared at me like she could still make things worse. And then I saw it. One envelope slipping from the stack of confiscated papers. It had my name on it, but it wasn't just another forged document. Something inside hinted at another scheme, one she hadn't fully revealed. My curiosity surged. Karen's first move had failed, but her next one? That could change everything. That evening, back at my house, I tore open the envelope that had slipped from the HOA office. Inside were copies of emails, contracts, and notes, plans that Karen had drawn up months in advance. She wasn't just trying to claim my property. She had a whole network ready to pressure every nearby homeowner into giving up their land too. My stomach sank. If she succeeded, the HOA could become a corporate machine, swallowing small properties one by one. But buried in the pile was a small USB drive labeled Backup Do Not Open. My instincts screamed that this might be the smoking gun. I plugged it into my laptop carefully. Instantly, a folder popped up. Photos of forged signatures, scanned contracts, and even a voice memo of Karen laughing about how easy it would be to take over Daniel's lot. I couldn't help but smirk. She had left a trail, thinking no one would ever find it. Then a new file blinked on the screen, an encrypted PDF. I opened it, my eyes widening. It contained a map of properties, HOA loopholes, and a list of influential people she planned to bribe. And at the bottom, her ultimate move, a forged deed transferring my father's original lot into HOA control retroactively, backdating it by decades. I realized the stakes had just gone way higher. Karen wasn't just bold. She was dangerous. But now, armed with all this evidence, I had power she never expected. My phone buzzed. Brian had sent a message. FBI wants the USB. Bring it in first thing. This could lead to federal charges for everyone involved. I stared at the screen, heart racing. Karen thought she was untouchable, but her empire of lies was about to crumble completely, and I had a front row seat. But then, my neighbor, old Mr. Jenkins, leaned over the fence, whispering nervously, "You know, Karen didn't act alone. There's someone else pulling strings." A chill ran down my spine. This story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up to pounding on my door. 3 sharp knocks, official, heavy. When I opened it, 2 FBI agents stood outside, badges flashing. Behind them was Brian, holding a folder. "Mr. Daniels," one agent said, "we'll need the USB, but first, we think you should see this." He handed me a printed photo, security footage from the HOA office raid. My breath caught. Standing behind Karen in the image wasn't just any bystander. It was Councilman Reed, one of the town's officials, the man who'd signed off on every HOA expansion request in the last 5 years. "He's been approving forged filings," Brian explained quietly. "Looks like Karen was just the face of it." I felt a flash of anger. The whole thing was bigger, political even. No wonder Karen was so confident. She had City Hall behind her. I gave the agents the USB, explaining what I'd found inside. They nodded, almost impressed. "You realize," one said, "this could trigger a full corruption case. You might have just uncovered a local ring." Before I could answer, a black SUV sped past my house and screeched to a stop at the corner. The window rolled down. Karen. Her eyes were wild, her hair messy, and even from a distance I could see her shouting something I couldn't hear. Then she sped off. One agent turned to me. "She posted bail an hour ago," Brian swore under his breath. "She's not going to let this go." I felt a cold determination settle in. "Good," I said quietly, "because neither am I." That evening, I checked my security cameras, making sure every angle of my property was covered. As the footage rolled, I froze. The timestamp showed someone sneaking around my backyard fence just after midnight. Not Karen, someone taller, heavier, and wearing a county maintenance jacket. They weren't here for property photos. They were here for something else. Karen wasn't acting alone, and whoever that man was, he was still out there. The following night, I couldn't shake the unease crawling under my skin. Every sound outside made me tense. Around 2 a.m., my dog started barking at the backyard. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out quietly. The air was cold. heavy with that stillness that only happens before something bad. The fence gate creaked, slightly open. I moved closer, beam cutting through the dark, and that's when I saw it. Fresh footprints in the mud leading straight to my shed. My heart thudded. That shed held my father's old land files, the original deed, the one Karen had tried to forge. I yanked the door open. Empty boxes. The metal cabinet was pried open, lock snapped. But whoever broke in hadn't gotten far. My security camera light blinked red above the door. By dawn, I reviewed the footage. The intruder's face was partially hidden, but when he turned, I caught the reflection of a county badge clipped to his belt, the same department Councilman Reed oversaw. I called Brian immediately. They tried to steal the original deed, I said. Stay inside, he warned. The FBI's expanding the investigation. Don't confront anyone. But it was too late for patience. I printed the clearest still from the footage and drove to the county hall myself. When I walked in, Reed was at the front desk, all smiles for the public. I dropped the photo in front of him, his smile faltered. You recognize him? I asked. Reed glanced down, then back up, his tone turning cold. You should leave this alone, Daniels. You've made enough noise, that was confirmation enough. I stepped closer, voice low. You backed Karen's fraud and now you're sending people to my property at night. The FBI already has your name on record. It's over. His eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, two men in suits walked through the doors. FBI agents. One of them nodded at me, then turned to Reed. Councilman Reed, you're coming with us. Reed's face went pale. You can't, but they already had cuffs ready. The entire office went silent as they escorted him out. Outside, Brian met me on the steps, shaking his head in disbelief. You realize you just exposed a whole county-level fraud network? I exhaled, tension finally breaking. I just wanted to keep my dad's land. Brian smiled faintly. Well, now you've cleaned up half the county. I looked out across the parking lot and there she was again. Karen sitting in her car staring at me. No smirk this time, just quiet, bitter hatred. She rolled up her window and drove away. I thought it was over, but as I turned to leave, Brian's phone buzzed. He frowned, then looked at me. The Bureau just found another list, he said slowly. Karen wasn't the only HOA president forging documents. There are dozens across the state. My pulse quickened. I realized this wasn't the end. It was only the start of something much, much bigger. Over the next week, the news started spreading like wildfire. Local papers ran headlines. FBI raids HOA ring. County official and president arrested for forgery. Neighbors stopped by, shaking their heads, murmuring about Karen's tantrums and the board's shady dealings. I thought I could finally breathe, but Karen wasn't finished. One evening, I got a certified letter. She had filed a motion claiming my property was illegally occupied because, according to her, the forged deed she submitted retroactively gave the HOA ownership. My hands trembled as I read it. She was trying one last legal trick. Brian looked over my shoulder. It's baseless. The federal case completely invalidates any of her claims, but she's desperate. She'll try anything. The next morning, I returned to the local courthouse to serve notice. As I walked past the hallway, I caught sight of Karen arguing with a clerk. Her voice was frantic, fingers pointing, papers flying. The clerk shook her head firmly. Karen stormed out, slamming the door. She had no authority left, yet her fury was more dangerous than ever. Back at home, I reviewed the files on the USB once more. There were phone numbers, email chains, and internal messages that could help the FBI link the fraud to other counties. I sent everything over with Brian. Then, an unexpected twist. My security camera pinged with motion. A familiar figure crouched near the edge of my driveway. My pulse raced. It was not Karen, but a young woman holding a stack of papers. I ran outside cautiously. Are you? I began. She held up the papers. I'm with the HOA whistleblower team. Karen's emails. Contracts. She planned to sell your lot to a developer. They need these files. I realized then that my little fight had turned into a coalition. People were coming forward. Karen's reach, which once felt invincible, was crumbling under the weight of truth. That night, I sat on the porch looking at my land. The sun set golden across the property. Karen's reign was over. The fraud exposed, but the full story was just beginning to unfold. My father's legacy was safe, and justice, slow, messy, but real, was finally in motion. Weeks passed, and the FBI wrapped up their investigation. Karen, the board members, and even Councilman Reed faced federal charges. Courtroom footage went viral. Karen's smugness replaced by panic. Reed trying to defend himself. Every lie unraveling on live cameras. One afternoon, Brian called me with a grin I hadn't seen in months. "You can finally relax. Your property's fully cleared. The forged documents are worthless. Everything you've worked for, protected." I walked through my land, breathing deeply, sunlight warming my shoulders. The shed, the original deed, the fences, they were all intact. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift. Then, a twist I didn't see coming, my mailbox jingled. Inside was a plain envelope with no return address. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single note typed, "You won this battle, Daniels. But there are more like me. They won't stop. Keep your eyes open." I smiled faintly, shaking my head. Karen and Reed were gone, but the game of land, power, and corruption wasn't over. Still, I realized something important. Truth, patience, and careful planning could topple even the most entitled, ruthless people. That evening, I stood on my porch, looking at the horizon. My family was safe, my land was mine, and justice had been served. The entire neighborhood knew the story now, and Karen's name would forever be synonymous with greed and arrogance. I whispered to myself, half laughing, "They messed with the wrong landowner this time, but I'll be ready no matter who comes next." And for the first time, I felt truly free. By late afternoon, I noticed something strange. Neighbors were whispering, pointing toward Karen's old property. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked over cautiously. The yard was full of boxes, and a moving truck sat idling. Suddenly, Karen appeared, furious, pacing back and forth. "You think this ends here? You think I'm done?" she shouted, slamming a clipboard on the ground. Her face was red, eyes wild. But now she wasn't alone. Another man in a suit hovered behind her, trying to calm her down. I realized immediately this was her attempt at a comeback. A fake community initiative meant to claim new properties under her influence. But I had proof. Every move she made, every document was already in the hands of the FBI. I stepped closer, holding up my phone. "Karen, it's over. The Bureau already has every contract, every email, every scheme you've ever tried. Any attempt to touch this land or others will land you back in federal custody." Her lips trembled. You can't stop me." I smiled faintly, shaking my head. "Oh, I already have." The man behind her sighed, guiding her toward the moving truck. Karen's fury was still visible, but she had no leverage left. The neighbors, who had once feared her, now watched with relief. She had no power here anymore. As she drove away, I felt a wave of vindication. Every scheme she had planned had been exposed, and the ripple effect of her fraud had been stopped before it could hurt anyone else. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen or someone like her would try again. But this time I would be ready. Months later, the dust had finally settled. The FBI completed their investigation, and Karen, her board, and Councilman Reed were all convicted. The local news ran follow-ups. HOA fraud ring busted, victims' properties restored. My neighbors waved as I walked through the neighborhood, smiling and thanking me. At home, I sat on the porch looking over my father's land. The shed was repaired, the fences straightened, and the garden finally planted. My family gathered around, laughter filling the air, a sharp contrast to the chaos of months before. Brian called one last time. "Everything's official. Your property is fully protected, and the Bureau says your evidence helped prevent similar schemes across the state. You didn't just win for yourself, you saved dozens of people from the same fraud." I let out a long breath. "It feels good," I said, voice quiet, "to finally see justice served." A soft breeze rustled the trees, and for the first time the land felt truly mine, free from threats, manipulation, and lies. Karen's name was now a cautionary tale, her empire dismantled. I looked at the horizon and smiled, thinking about the lessons learned. Vigilance, courage, and persistence could topple even the most ruthless and entitled. The fight had been intense, emotional and exhausting, but standing there, with my family safe and my land secure, I felt proud. And as the sun set over the property my father had built, I whispered quietly, almost to myself, "You can try to take what's mine. But truth, justice, and family always win in the end." The battle was over, the land was safe, and freedom had been preserved. Justice finally had its moment.